Hey home grower, you just got your finest crop yet. Maybe it's your first, but I know you did your research. You prepared and you pulled it off. Look at those killer buds. But are you ready to harvest? I mean, like, what's your plan for drying? Can't just leave it anywhere. Oh, how about that spare closet? Nope, that's not gonna work. Ooh, how about that guest room your mother-in-law always stays in? Nah, cause then your whole house is gonna smell. And you know you can't just leave it outside. That's just a plain bad idea. You could convert your grow tent, but what about all those late bloomers and the clones or the seedlings you got on the way? What you really need is dedicated space for drying. It has to block odors and light. It's gotta prevent mold, mildew issues, and have the right amount of constant airflow while still being contained in an environment. What you really need is
Alright, what's up, Gromies? How's everybody doing? Man, we are so excited to be here. My name is Charlie, and I'm here on behalf of DryTents. Thank you so much for coming to our portal. Today, I'd like to give you guys some information on really the specificity of drying and why we think drying and curing is probably one of the most important steps in your grow. Now, I know everybody's saying, well, you got to grow it first. Absolutely. And that's the biggest key is you guys are going to put a lot of money, effort, time, right? And then it kind of becomes an afterthought for some of us. What are we going to do next? So we made this amazing crop. Everything's been going great. We've been monitoring humidity, lighting schedules. Everything's been going good. But now what's going to happen moving forward? All right, moving forward, and the whole last step, which is actually what, like I said, is probably the most important step, especially if you're a connoisseur, right? If you want your buds to be the most amazing, flavorful, smooth hitting, keep the terpenes, everything going, you're gonna wanna make sure you dry slowly. So today in this talk, we're gonna talk about a few key components that will get you to this drying stage, all right? First, we're gonna talk about airflow. Then we're gonna talk about temperature, humidity, the lighting, which hopefully there will be none, and we'll also talk about two-stage harvesting, and then we're actually going to talk about curing. So curing will be the last step. For you guys, some of you may know or may not know, being new growers, experienced growers, probably the worst thing that could happen is you dry your crop too quick, and that's where we come in with airflow, all right? If we're going to dry too quick, there's some devices out there that do it and say, oh, we can dry your buds extremely quick. Not something you're going to want to do. You're going to want to dry them slowly. Now, how slowly do we want to dry? Ideally, we want to be in the sweet spot from anywhere from 10 to 14 days. That's right, about 2 weeks. And you can say, man, I've been growing this crop for 3, 6, 8 months. I got to wait another 2 weeks after I chop this bad boy down? Absolutely, all right? The main component is before you do your flush and everything else, afterwards, we're gonna want those buds to be sitting completely in the dark, and I'll get to that in a second. But what happens is when they're in the dark, they're gonna start breaking down their chlorophyll. And when you break down the chlorophyll, that's how you get this nice taste later on. If there's too much chlorophyll in it and it kind of smells like hay, you're gonna have a rough smoke to begin with, especially if you didn't do your proper flushing. Now, with airflow, how much airflow do I want? Well, ideally, you don't want too much. Now you say, what is too much? Well, if you're gonna be drying in a concealed space, right? You definitely do not want a fan blowing directly on your buds. If you do that, well, like I said, you're gonna dry it out too quickly. So if you do have to add a fan because your humidity is too high, you want that fan to be facing away from those buds, maybe bouncing off a wall, some way to get circulation. Ideally, less airflow is best, although we do want to circulate airflow around that room, all right? So first component, airflow. Honestly, the first component though is you need some type of dedicated drying space. A lot of you guys, depending on the size of your grow, is going to depend on the size of your space. If you guys are harvesting outdoor, a lot of plants, 100 plus, you're probably going to have a dedicated room that also has everything set up for you. Now for the connoisseur growers, the small guys, the guys growing anywhere from 1 to 6 plants, you're gonna wanna be able in a contained area. Because when you contain, it's the same way that you did in the grow, right? You're gonna be able to make sure that all these things, like I said, light, temperature, humidity, are all dialed in to the proper ratio. So first things first, airflow. Less is more, not really a great saying, but less airflow directly pointed at your buds is going to give you a longer drying period. Now, whether you want to wet trim or dry trim is up to you. It's always important to know what type of climate you're in and what that room's humidity is going to be. All right. Next thing is going to be temperature. Now we want to make sure that we keep the proper temperature. Temperatures want to be around 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. For my guys with Celsius, we'll put the conversion somewhere. All right. But for my North American growers, a perfect temperature is 65 to 75 degrees. All right. That's just so we, like I said, we don't lose too much humidity fast and we don't dry too quick. Moving on to the humidity, how much humidity do I actually want? Well, anywhere from 45 to 55%. Now, normal conditions, your home, or depending on, like I said, where you're going to be doing this, you'll probably have a normal RH around 50, but we want to be able to monitor that. So how do you do that? You guys can get a hygrometer, dangle it in the tent. Make sure that the humidity, like I said, doesn't drop below 40%. Because if we do, all that moisture is going to be sucked out of the stems and the buds, and you're going to have a harsh smoke. This is the reason we're talking so much about drying, is that end product you want it to be as perfect as possible. All right. And if it dries too quickly, you're going to have a very harsh burn. I know a lot of us have been there. We take a toke and it just feels like it's, sandpaper going down into our lungs. We don't want that. By the time we're curing, we also want to keep a specific humidity, probably around 60 to 62%. All right, but we'll get to that. Next, what is another key component? Well, lighting. There should be absolutely no lighting. So your area has to be completely dark. Once you've chopped these babies, make sure you put them into a closet or some type of area that's going to have no light leakage. Like I said before, when we want all the chlorophyll to get dissolved and break down in the plant, if there's any light leak, those plants are still alive even though you just chopped them. And they may suck up some of that light and kind of continue to what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe not necessarily photosynthesize, but they're going to stay a little active and bring a little more chlorophyll in. So we want to make sure we keep that in a dark space, no light leak, so dark as possible. All right. Third, or whatever tip I'm on, I think it might be 4. Fourth, let's talk about stage 2 harvesting. Now, what is stage 2 harvesting and why would I want to do it? Now, for some of you small-time growers, you may have 1 or 2 plants. And what happens is, in a small confined space, when you have a lot of light distributed across the top, but not so much coming on the sides or the bottom, you may have some buds at the bottom that are not fully matured. In this case, you can, chop off some of the top buds that are maturing. The trichomes are starting to turn amber. You don't want to ruin those and lose too much and let the CBD and all that take over. So you can do a top harvest, but make sure you put those to dry properly, and then give yourself, another 2 to 3 week window to mature those buds at the bottom, which is always a good idea, like I said, to have a specific drying area so you can continue to grow and then dry separately. You're not going to be able to do this stuff at the same time. If you chop, hang in the same tent where you're trying to grow, like I said, light is a no-no, all right? And then my final step, curing. So we've gone through this whole thing of airflow, temperature, humidity, light, the harvest, curing. Curing is now another long process. It should be longer than you think. So if we're going to be drying for a maximum of 2 weeks, 14 days, ideally a minimum around, 7 is pushing it, but around 10 to 14 days is where we want to be drying. How long do we want to be curing? Well, great question. It's going to take longer than you think. It's ideally, again, another 2 to 6 weeks, depending how much moisture was left in those buds. Because don't forget, once you've chopped those down and those buds come out, even if they're dry to the touch, the stems still may be harboring some moisture. So when you put them in the jar for the curing process, what's going to happen then is the moisture from the stems are going to leak out into your buds. So you may be highly recommended, make sure you get mini hygrometers that go inside of your jars. And then that allows you to, like I said, monitor those RH values. So when you start out and it's a little high, you know what I'm saying? You're going to have to burp that jar every day, twice a day for, like I said, anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks to make sure that those buds are curing properly. Because all this whole scenario, what does everything link back into? One, if we dry too quick and we cure too quick, it's going to be a harsh smoke. But if we do everything too long and there's too much humidity, that's when we get bud rot. And both scenarios aren't good. At least dry, you may be able to recover with a Ovita pack or something that influences the jar to add a little bit of moisture. But if we get bud rot and we do it too long, what's going to happen? You're going to get mildew. You're going to have something that's unsmokable, something that's unsafe and unhealthy for you to actually ingest. So it is a fine balance. And like I said, it's an art in itself. The growing is the most fun part. The drying is the waiting, the patience, the connoisseur to getting that right terpene flavor and making sure that your buds smoke evenly and deliciously. All right. So here at DryTents, that's what we're all about. We are enthusiastic about the end process because we put a lot of work in growing ourselves. And when we get to that final stage, we wanted to make sure that we had a product that was able to let, small to medium growers have an ideal dedicated space to allow them to harvest the most beneficial buds that they could have. So here at DryTents, you can find us at Instagram, so at DryTents. You can find us on the web, drytents.com, and you can see what we're all about. After this, we're going to give you a handout for you guys who came today. If you guys are interested in more about drying and anything that you can do, like I said, check us out online or check us out on Instagram. Send us a message. We're all good with that. With us, we have a innovative hanging system. We call it the bud chandelier. So it's very easy to hang your rack, hang all the buds, and then we have a innovative system to allow this hanging bud chandelier to actually spin and rotate inside the tent, which eliminates direct airflow. So almost think like a rotisserie chicken is kind of rotating under that heat. We're doing the opposite with no heat, and we're forcing it to make its own airflow. So we don't actually have a fan that goes in the tent. The ideal situation is that you hook up this tent to your already situational grow, and that's going to draw airflow from that tent. So we're already automatically doing away with direct airflow. Like I mentioned before, direct airflow is a no-go. All right, so we got the bud chandelier spinning, the air being sucked out. It creates a nice negative pressure that allows, like I said, the air to move around, but not to be completely direct. All right, with humidity control, we have a hygrometer involved, so you can dangle that in the tent. Like I said, check to make sure that everything's doing good on its proper time frame. Like I said, 14 days ideally. Light leak, the way that we've established this is any hosing that's coming from this tent to the other is actually matted. So normally you see ducting that has silver or reflective material. In our case, we're using a matte dark color, so none of the light from your other tent while the grow's going on is being filtered into that tent. Because like I said, we want to make sure we keep everything tight and dark. All right, so that's what we're all about, guys. Like I said, my name is Charlie. We are excited to be here. After this presentation, right about now, we're going to take and be open to questions. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. And then again, thank you so very much. Everybody have a great day. Stay up.